So I'm going to read, it says, verse 1. For since the law has but a shadow of the good things to come, instead of the true, from a true form of these realities. So the law, it says, was nothing but a shadow of the good things to come. Chapter 10, Hebrews chapter 10, verse 1. Okay. It says, so it can never, the reality, it can never, by the same sacrifice that are continually offered every year, make perfect those who draw near. We talked about that last week also. The sacrifices that they did continually, the ones they offered every year, it said make nothing perfect, or they wasn't able to draw near to God because the sacrifice did not take away sins. He says, otherwise, verse 2, otherwise would they not have ceased to be offered, since the worshipers, having once been cleansed, would no longer have any conscience of sins. So under the old covenant, what's taking place here, once a year a sacrifice was offered. A sacrifice was offered every year. He said, but no one was made perfect, and could no one draw near to God, because they did it every year, because sins were not taken away. But until sins are removed, then it'll stop, and we're going to get into that. But he says, otherwise they would have ceased to be offered, and the worshipers, having once been cleansed, would no longer have any conscience of sins. So, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we're talking about conscience of sins. Why did they have conscience of sins? Because every year, the people would bring the sacrifice for their sins. So it kept the worshipers conscious of sin. Hear me now. The worshipers that are in the tabernacle, that are doing their religious duties, they were all through all that, everything they were doing, they were conscious of sin. Because everything they did had to do with the people's sin. You know what I'm saying? From the remember he told the tabernacle, from the way they came in to the altar, to the laver, to the holy place, to the most holy place. Everything that they did, it kept them conscious of sin. We go to church. We go to church. If I'm going to church, and I'm sitting here for 2 hours, and you're keeping me conscious of sin, or people in the church, they're sin conscious. So they're serving you, but they are sin conscious. You know what I'm saying? In other words, you come into church, but those that are waiting on you, they're sin conscious because of you. So they're going to serve you under a sin consciousness. That's under condemnation. Because they were serving the people under condemnation because of their sins. So they practiced the religious duties all the way to the holies of holies so that they would be forgiven. But this was something that they did over and over and over and over again.
Wouldn't you say that's kind of one of the principles why, like, the clergy that got corrupt in, back in the day, didn't they kind of like use that factor to like squeeze people, kind of, you know what I mean?
Control them, you mean?
Like under condemnation, like because you haven't done this, and if you don't do this, you're going to be condemned, and isn't that the same principle?
Yeah, same principle, yeah. Anything that we do over and over and over and over again, it becomes religion. Your heart is not in it. It's like, okay, here we go. Another lamb. Walk down here and do this. Next time we got to do it again, So we're just doing it. Okay, God, don't kill us. Okay, well, we're just doing it. But it's not leading them to a perfect end. It's not leading them to where God wants them to be. But it's just a shadow. It's just a shadow. because Jesus is the substance of making this all clear. So he says, let me read this again. For since the law has but a shadow of the good things to come, instead of the true forms of these realities, it can never, by the same sacrifice that are continually offered every year, make perfect those who draw near. Otherwise, if they could draw near, otherwise would they not have ceased to be offered, since the worshippers, having once been cleansed, would no longer have any conscience of sins. But that is God's goal for us, is to take us to a place where we will not have what? Conscience of sin. Because this is what God's conscience is. He didn't send Jesus to a cross so he can still remember our sins. That don't make sense. Jesus didn't go to the cross and die. God raised him up from the dead so God can still be sin conscious towards us. No. So he says, but in these sacrifices they are a reminder of sins every year. And these sacrifices, the sacrifices of bulls and goats, is a reminder of sins every year. He says, for it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to do what? To take away sins. It's impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. He says, consequently, when Christ came into the world, he said, sacrifices and offerings you have not desired, but a body have you prepared for me. And burnt offerings and sin offerings you've taken no pleasure. Then I said, behold, I have come to do your will, O God. Why is God not taking pleasure? Why do you think he's not taking pleasure in sin offerings and burnt offerings? Pardon me?
They're not doing it full-heartedly.
They're not doing it full-heartedly? Why is God not, anybody else, why is he not, why is he not pleased with it? With the burnt offerings and the sin offerings? Why do you think he's not pleased with it? Because he required it. He said, you required it, but you're not pleased with it.
He became mature, maybe?
You became mature. What do you think? Jesus says, sacrifices and offerings you have not desired, but a body you have prepared for me. In burnt offerings and sin offerings you have taken no pleasure. Taken no pleasure. Then he said, behold, I have come to do your will, O God, as it is written of me in the scroll of the book. The burnt offerings and the sin offerings was never making them complete. It was never taking away sin. It was never able to draw near. So God is not pleased with it. He's not pleased with it because it's not allowing us to come into the holies of holies. It's not allowing us to have a relationship with him. It's not allowing us to draw near to him. So he's not pleased with that work, even though he put it in order. But it was a shadow of Christ. Because his ultimate plan is Christ to fulfill all this, where we can draw near. So see, when we sometimes in our conscience we'll think the opposite. We'll think the negative part of it. If God ain't pleased with it, oh, what did I do? It must be something I did. And I'm starting examining myself because he's not pleased. But in this matter, he's not pleased because it has not brought us yet to where he wants it to bring us. So we see the love of God in this. So in verse 8 he says, when he said above, you have neither desired nor taken pleasure in the sacrifices or offerings and burnt offerings and sin offerings, these are offered according to the law. Then he added, behold, I have come to do your will. This is Jesus saying here. He says, he does away with the first in order to establish the second. So we know that the old covenant is fading away, He does away with it to establish the second. And by that will, by the new covenant, we have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ. So, we have been sanctified through the body of Jesus Christ. So Jesus giving his life on the cross, this body, has sanctified us to those who believe. We have been sanctified. What is sanctified?
Cleanse?
Cleansed? Anybody else?
Saved?
Sanctuary.
Pardon me?
Saved?
Sanctuary.
Been set apart. His body sanctified us and set us apart for the purpose of God, for the use of God. Because his death took away our sin, right? So we were able to be sanctified, made holy, set apart from sin. So his body made that possible. This is before we were saved. See, this is an act that has happened before we were born. That sanctification is preserved. It was made ready. When we heard the gospel message, sanctification is already in place. But to be a partaker of it is to receive Christ as our Savior and Lord. So receiving him sanctifies us, sets us apart from sin. So, but what I want us to get to understand is the body of Christ, okay, his death on the cross has sanctified us because the blood of bulls and goats could not, it sanctified them. In other words, it was a shadow and type for the worshipers, those that work in the tabernacle. The blood, because Moses, he sprinkled the blood of them on all the people and all the instruments and things like that. That sanctified them to work in the ministry, to worship God. Because when the people brought all their animals and stuff to them, they better have been sanctified. God saw them cleansed. God saw them separated from the common folk. To do what? To do a work that he set them apart for to do. But they had to do exactly what he ordered them to do. Because if they didn't, they might find themselves dead.
So today, are we sanctified through the blood of Christ?
Through the blood of Christ. Yeah, we're sanctified through the blood of Christ. So you know, you heard me talk about forgiveness before, right? So we know that the blood has forgiven us and sanctified us. So you can't. They were not serving in the temple or in the tabernacle, and say they was doing some work, and oh man, I'll be right back. I gotta go over here and make sure I get forgiven. Then I'll be right back. What? What are you talking about? You were set apart. That's why you in here. Because you were set apart. So what do you mean you gotta go do? You gotta go make sure you're right with God. You gotta make sure you're forgiven. You gotta make sure everything is okay. How do you think you got in here? It was through his blood. His blood sanctified us and put us in a position where God has accepted us. So when we come to understand that and grow in that, then sin conscience is out the window. It's a service. This is a service unto God. It's a presenting our bodies as a living sacrifice unto God, and with the Spirit of God living through us. But other than that, because it talks about his blood cleansing our conscience from dead works. So he says here, what did I stop at? Verse 10. Verse 10. Then he adds, behold, I have come to do your will. He does away with the first in order to establish the second. And by that will we have been sanctified through the offering of his body, the body of Christ, once and for all.